BBC London 94.9, it's 8:52, and now we're looking back, as we have over the past year or so quite a lot, to the Great War. Children at primary schools in 3 London boroughs are to be shown how the First World War affected the way their ancestors played. Between 1940 and 1918, and I did not know this, it was illegal to fly kites, play conkers, or even feed the birds. So bang goes Mary Poppins. You can't go fly a kite, you can't feed the birds, tuppence a bag. And if you had friends with foreign parents, they were shipped off to internment camps. The charity London Plays behind the project, and I'm delighted to welcome to the studio at BBC London 94.9 Paul Hocker, their development director. Good morning, Paul. How certain are we of these facts? I'd never heard of any of this before.
We're pretty certain. There was a piece of legislation called Defence of the Realm Act, acronym DORA, and DORA came into effect a couple of days into the start of World War One in 1914, and it had all kinds of restrictions, all kinds of things that the general population couldn't do, but a lot of it impacted on children's play. For example, you've mentioned kites, you've mentioned
conkers.
Conkers is an interesting one. Conkers actually put a few quid in kids' pockets because they were encouraged to go and collect up the conkers.
Were we going to throw them?
Yeah, when the munitions ran out. No,
beat the box, hurl a conker.
We probably would have won that as well. But anyway, they collected them up because they could extract some sort of cordite from it that went into munitions. But this wasn't such a great idea. And at the end of the war, there were piles of conkers outside munitions factories rotting, but kids could make a few quid by collecting them up. Yeah.
So what was the kites thing? Sorry, what was the kites thing?
The kites thing was the reason that was prohibited was because they were worried that it could guide zeppelins into the city. It could be a way of signalling to them where to bomb. There were all kinds of things that were taken. You couldn't whistle, for example. No, you couldn't whistle.
You still can't whistle in the Burlington Arcade in London.
Apart from Paul McCartney. He's the only person who's allowed to do that, yeah.
But why were you not allowed to whistle? What was the reasoning for that?
Because the whistle could have been confused as the whistle given for an air raid warning. So you could have whistled for a cab.
My goodness, you'd have had a really loud whistle.
You've heard my whistle, haven't you?
I so want to be able to do one of those whistles. I can barely do that.
It's funny that they still whistle for cabs in New York, so maybe they didn't have that problem there.
And why is it important for children to be reminded of this aspect of the Great War?
I think children's story within all the wars the last century have tended to be sidelined or minimised, and we're really keen. This is our third project funded by the Heritage Lottery. Our first one was about evacuees and how their play changed when they were sent out of London. This is a chance to look at World War One and really highlight the experience that children had during that time, a terrifying time where silent zeppelins flew overnight dropping bombs. In fact, the first victims of a plane bombing was a school in Poplar. So children suffered greatly in the war.
Fascinating sounding project. Thank you very much for coming and seeing us live. That was Paul Hocker there, the development director. And finally, very quickly, so why couldn't you feed the birds?
Because you couldn't give away food so easily.
No, of course you couldn't give away the food. That would be ridiculous.
Stale bread.
Do you know what? Interestingly, there's a story in the papers today about the perfect bedtime story, talking about children's things. And the perfect bedtime story lasts 8 minutes and 36 seconds, which to me sounds like a pretty piffling amount for a bedtime story. I wanted my mum to read and read and read until she went hoarse. Talking about horses, it includes a dragon, a princess, a wizard and a fairy. This is studied from Butlins. So the perfect story is set in a castle. The hero carries a magic wand and a mobile phone. 21st century. Horses are the most popular mode of transport. There must be a strong friendship between the characters. There has to be a scary moment. Of course there has to be a scary moment in which the hero faces danger, followed by a fight between the hero and the baddie. And of course, the hero must defeat the villain and must live happily ever after.
Well, in fact, the great William Goldman, the screenplay writer who gave us Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, he had 2 daughters, and he used to tell them stories on alternate nights. And one always wanted a story about a princess, and one about a bride. So he wrote the Princess Bride film.
Isn't that the best
nice.
film?
Yeah.
And isn't that the best film?
My name is Alphonse Montoya. You killed my father. Prepare to die.
You set him off.
What?
Set him off.
I know, but wasn't it a brilliant film?
Yeah, it's
one of my favourite films, and also one of my favourite books to read as well, The Princess Bride. Such a good... and I don't think they've changed the cover. You know how quite often they change the cover of these things.
Because it's kind of iconic, isn't it?
It is an iconic black and white shot, and it is brilliant. But fairy tales, and it's so funny because it is true. You do always want it to be happily ever after. Yeah.
Well, anyway. My second oldest daughter used to, when she was 4 or 5, she'd pretend to be telling the others a story, and she'd always end every page with "next morning." They went to bed and woke up next morning as she made up a little story.
And I remember my niece when she was little, and my sister used to say when I was babysitting, she'd say, "Oh, by the way, don't do Little Red Riding Hood, it gives her nightmares." And so I'd say, "What should we read tonight?" She'd go, "Little Red Riding Hood." And I said, "No, your mum says I can't do that one." And she'd go, "Well, I'm not going to bed unless you promise to do that one." I go, no, you're not having it. And we'd have this standoff, and I go, oh, OK, Little Red Riding Hood. And then, of course, within an hour of going to sleep, the wolf, it's coming to get me.
All you need to say was, "My name is Alphonse Montoya. You killed my father. We go. Prepare to die." Thank you very much. He's a good sport. Paul Hocker there, for the development director of London Play, the charity behind that project. 3 London primary schools being told how children played, or rather didn't, back in the Great War. It's 8:58. Stand by for Duncan Barks with a fantastic show in for Vanessa Feltz. We're back Monday morning, Bank Holiday Monday, from 6, whether you like it or not.